August 2022, Kabul. The morning sun has just touched the balcony of a safe house, where an old man with a flowing white beard steps outside, taking a moment to breathe in the crisp morning air. He doesn't know that thousands of feet above, the cold mechanical eyes of a drone are locked onto him. But this time, there will be no massive explosion, no crumbling walls, no collateral damage. Minutes later, the R9X, the infamous ninja missile, slices through the sky. This weapon carries no gunpowder, no fire. Instead, at the moment of impact, 6 integrated steel blades deploy from its fuselage, shredding the target in silence. The old man is gone in an instant. Behind him, the glass of the balcony window isn't even cracked. This was the end of 20 years in the shadows for the man the world knew as the mastermind of Al-Qaeda, Ayman al-Zawahiri. History is in the headlines, but the truth? That's hidden in the profiles. Welcome to Profile. Subscribe to join our community of curious minds. Ayman al-Zawahiri was born in 1951 in Mahdi, one of Cairo's wealthiest districts. His home was a sanctuary for Egypt's scientific and religious elite. His grandfather was the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, the highest authority in Sunni Islam, often described as the Vatican of the East. His uncle was the first Secretary General of the Arab League. His father, Muhammad Rabi al-Zawahiri, was a world-class professor of pharmacology. In this world, Ayman wasn't destined to be a rebel. He was destined to be the heir to a scientific and religious empire. He was a quiet, studious boy, obsessed with books. Unlike Osama bin Laden, who sought adventure, Ayman preferred the library. He followed his father's footsteps, graduating as an ophthalmologist, an eye surgeon. The very hands that would later design the strategies for the major global terrorist operations spent years with the delicate precision of a surgeon, saving the eyesight of others. But beneath the calm exterior of the doctor, a fire was smoldering. At just 14 years old, Ayman joined the Muslim Brotherhood. To him, religion wasn't just personal prayer, it was a political system that had to rule the world. The true turning point, however, didn't happen in a library. It happened in the dark cells of Egyptian prisons. In 1981, following the assassination of President Anwar Sadat, Zawahiri was arrested alongside hundreds of others. In the high-security sections of Tora prison, he faced a reality that severed his ties to the civilized world forever. Reports state he was subjected to brutal torture. Many analysts believe that Ayman the surgeon died under the lashes of Egyptian interrogators, and from his ashes, Ayman the militant was born. In prison, he underwent a radicalizing experience, that power understands no language but violence. When he was released in 1984, the aristocratic doctor from Cairo was gone. He was now a man filled with a systematic ideological hostility for secular governments. He realized that to change the world, a stethoscope wasn't enough. He needed a Kalashnikov and a real battlefield. That year, he packed his bags and headed to the place that would change his fate and the fate of the world forever: Afghanistan. A place where Saudi money was waiting for Egyptian brains. In the mid-1980s, Ayman al-Zawahiri left Egypt for Saudi Arabia, eventually making his way to Peshawar, a city in northwest Pakistan, the primary hub for militant groups. At that time, Peshawar was the nerve center for the Mujahideen fighting the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan. It was a magnet for Islamists from across the Arab world, all arriving to join what they called the Jihad against the occupiers. But Zawahiri wasn't there just to fight. he was there to build. In 1986, in the corridors of the Kuwaiti Red Crescent Hospital in Peshawar, the Egyptian surgeon met a tall, soft-spoken Saudi aristocrat, Osama bin Laden. This meeting was the spark that would set the world on fire. It was the fusion of Saudi wealth and Egyptian ideology. In this relationship, the scales were heavily tipped in Zawahiri's favor. Bin Laden was young, charismatic, and incredibly wealthy, but he lacked political and organizational experience. Zawahiri, on the other hand, was a battle-hardened strategist who had spent decades in the Egyptian underground. Intelligence experts believe Zawahiri effectively captured bin Laden's mind. He realized that the young Saudi was the unlimited credit card he needed to fund his global ambitions. Zawahiri transformed bin Laden from a mere financier of Afghan fighters into a global icon of jihad. It was Zawahiri who gave Al-Qaeda its structure. It was Zawahiri who wrote its manifesto. And most importantly, he was the one who pivoted bin Laden's gaze away from the near enemy, the local Arab governments, toward the far enemy, the United States and the West. Bin Laden was the face of Al-Qaeda, but the brain issuing the orders from the shadows belonged to the Egyptian surgeon. By the time the two moved to Sudan in the 1990s, the transformation was complete. Zawahiri was facing a crisis at the time. His group in Egypt had been crushed, his comrades executed or imprisoned. He realized that to win, he had to change the game entirely. He convinced bin Laden to stop spending his fortune on local skirmishes and instead build a transnational army. In 1998, they formed the World Islamic Front. This bloody alliance was officially born, a marriage between the Saudi aristocrats' money and the Egyptian surgeon's organization. While bin Laden appeared in the media as the charismatic leader, Zawahiri was busy with corporate management. He designed Al-Qaeda like a multinational corporation with independent operational cells scattered across the globe. They returned to Taliban-controlled Afghanistan with one goal: to plan the most devastating terrorist operation in history. When 9/11 happened, the world spoke only of bin Laden, but security analysts knew the intellectual fingerprints of the attack led straight back to Cairo. Zawahiri was the architect of a strategy designed to lure America into the quagmire of Middle Eastern wars, a plan to bleed the West's economy and shatter its sense of invincibility. After the fall of the Taliban in 2001, the two vanished into the remote mountainous regions between Afghanistan and Pakistan. During that long decade of pursuit, Zawahiri took on the role of ideological spokesman. While bin Laden faded into silence and isolation, Zawahiri's endless stream of videos and messages kept the heart of Al-Qaeda beating. He spent those 20 years turning Al-Qaeda from a centralized group into a global franchise, ensuring that even if its leaders were killed, the structure would survive. He was a surgeon who intended for every operation to be a deep wound in the body of the global order, unaware that the world was changing, and the legacy he built would soon face a challenge greater than any American bomb. When Osama bin Laden was killed in May 2011, the man who had stood in the shadows for decades finally stepped into the light. He took the top seat. But Ayman al-Zawahiri was inheriting an empire in decline. He took command of Al-Qaeda just as the Arab world was erupting in the Arab Spring. A new generation of radicals was taking to the streets, and they no longer had the patience for his long, dry, theoretical lectures. The contrast between the Egyptian surgeon and the Saudi aristocrat was immediate and devastating. If bin Laden led with charisma and a soft-spoken mystic aura, Zawahiri ruled like a strict and pedantic professor. His videos didn't inspire the battlefield. They felt like tedious classroom sessions, disconnected from the raw, chaotic reality of the Middle Eastern streets. But the deepest wound to his leadership didn't come from Washington. It came from within the very ideology he had helped build. It was a monster of his own making: ISIS. The rise of the Islamic State in 2014 was a fundamental shift for Al-Qaeda. ISIS offered something Zawahiri couldn't: instant gratification. With Hollywood-style production and extreme and graphic violence, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi stole the hearts of young radicals away from Al-Qaeda. Baghdadi offered a caliphate now. Zawahiri offered a long war strategy. To the youth, Zawahiri looked like a relic of the past. This internal war forced Al-Qaeda to mutate. Under Zawahiri's leadership, the organization shifted from a centralized command to a decentralized network. Local groups in Yemen, Somalia, and across Africa still swore an oath of loyalty to him, but in reality, they were making their own decisions. Zawahiri was no longer the CEO. He was becoming a hidden ideological reference. He spent his final years in a state of constant flight, moving under extreme security measures. His only connection to the world was through audio and video messages sent from unknown locations, echoing from a world that was rapidly moving on without him. The doctor who once sought to cure the world with a surgery of violence was now watching his own movement bleed out from 1,000 cuts. For decades, the United States kept Ayman al-Zawahiri at the very top of its most wanted list. A $25 million bounty was placed on his head, making him, alongside bin Laden, one of the most expensive targets in the history of intelligence. But after the Taliban's return to power in 2021, the ghost of Kabul finally returned to the city where it all began. He was moved into a safe house in the upscale Sherpur district, a neighborhood belonging to a top associate of the Haqqani network. The CIA was watching. By tracking his wife and children, they identified a pattern. They used a technique called pattern of life analysis. They noticed an old man who appeared on a third-floor balcony every single morning, always at the same time, always alone. He would read his books, breathe the morning air, but he never, not once, stepped out into the street. That balcony, his only regular exposure to the outdoors, became his greatest weakness. To ensure they had the right man, intelligence officers built a detailed scale model of the house to show President Joe Biden exactly how they could eliminate the target from thousands of miles away, without harming his family or the neighbors. On July 31st, 2022, as Zawahiri stepped onto that balcony for his morning ritual, the order was given. An MQ-9 Reaper drone released 2 Hellfire R9X missiles, the Ninja bombs. These weapons carry no explosives, only 6 razor-sharp steel blades that deploy seconds before impact. It was a surgical strike in every sense of the word. Zawahiri was gone in an instant, while the house behind him remained standing, and the city of Kabul barely felt a tremor. With the elimination of Ayman al-Zawahiri, Al-Qaeda lost the last remaining founder of its original generation and entered a new, uncertain era. Although in his final years Zawahiri had become more of an ideological reference than an active commander, his death was a heavy blow to an organization already suffering from a crisis of charisma and a steady flow of defections to ISIS. Today, according to UN and US intelligence reports, Saif al-Adel, a veteran Egyptian military commander, leads the group from the shadows, reportedly from inside Iran. Because of his possible presence in Iran, Al-Qaeda has even avoided officially announcing his leadership. This situation has turned Al-Qaeda into an even more decentralized network, where regional branches in Africa, Yemen, and Somalia enjoy greater operational independence. Zawahiri's legacy lives on, but the organization he built with bin Laden is no longer the centralized giant of the 2000s. Today, Al-Qaeda is more of a global brand and idea than a strong hierarchical structure. What is your perspective on Dr. Ayman al-Zawahiri? How does an elite, wealthy eye surgeon trade a life of healing for a life of global terror? Do you see him as a brilliant strategist who challenged the world's superpowers with almost nothing? Or was he simply a man who chose a path of destruction, leaving behind a legacy of instability that the Middle East is still reeling from? How do you see Zawahiri's legacy? Was he the strategic brain that redefined global terror, or a relic of a past era? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If this profile gave you a new perspective, support our mission with a like and share. Thank you for being part of the Profile community. Until next time, stay curious.